My daughter was still eating her birthday cake when my father pointed at her brand new bike and told her she should hand it over to someone who would appreciate it more. She was 10 years old. She had waited months for that bike, and he said it right there at the table in front of everyone, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. But what my husband did next, what he revealed in that dining room, changed our family in ways none of us saw coming. Let me take you back to that Sunday, because you need to understand just how ordinary it was supposed to be. We'd made this drive dozens of times. My husband Daniel, our daughter Sophie, and me, my parents' house, Sunday dinner. My mom always made too much food. My dad always dominated the conversation, and Sophie always found a way to bring up whatever she was most excited about that week. This time, it was her bike. She had turned 10 2 weeks earlier, and that bike was everything. Bright teal, white handlebars, a little wicker basket on the front that she was already planning to fill with flowers and stickers. Daniel had spent an entire Saturday afternoon putting it together in the garage, quietly following the instructions spread out across the floor, while Sophie hovered nearby, too excited to stay still. The moment it was finished, she rode it up and down our street until the streetlights came on. She talked about it through every course of that dinner, how she'd ridden all the way to the park, how her friend Maya wanted one just like it, how she was going to put a bell on the handlebar before school started. My mother listened with a smile. My father listened differently. That particular kind of quiet he slips into when he thinks someone is getting a little too happy about something they own. I knew that expression. I had seen it my whole life. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Then my mother brought out the cake. Chocolate, Sophie's favorite. She was mid-sentence about the ribbon she wanted to weave into the basket when my father set down his fork and looked at her. "You know," he said, "your cousin Jade doesn't have a bike." She barely knew Jade. They saw each other maybe once a year at holidays. My father picked up his fork again, completely casual. "You should give yours to her. She'd appreciate it more." Sophie stopped talking. That bright expression she'd been wearing all evening, the one that had been there since we walked through the door, faded so completely it was like watching a candle go out. She looked at her plate. Then she looked at me. "But it's my birthday bike," she said quietly. My father shrugged. "You already have plenty of things." My stomach turned, not because I was surprised, exactly. I had heard variations of that sentence my whole childhood, but hearing him say it to her at her birthday dinner, over her birthday cake, something inside me tightened in a way I hadn't expected. Sophie looked at me again, her voice even smaller. "Do I have to give it away?" Before I could answer, my father leaned forward. "If you want to be a good cousin." That's when Daniel put his fork down, not dramatically. He just set it on the plate, pushed back his chair, and stood up. No raised voice, no warning. He just stood up and looked my father directly in the eyes. "Frank," he said, "you don't get to decide what my daughter gives away." The room went completely silent. My mother looked back and forth between them. My father stared at Daniel like he was waiting for a punchline. "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked finally. "It means what it sounds like," Daniel said. "You don't tell a child to give away her birthday present." My father gave a short, dismissive laugh. "Relax, I'm teaching her generosity." "No," Daniel said. "You're not teaching her anything. You're taking something from her that she just received." My father leaned back in his chair, settling into the familiar posture of someone who has won every argument in this house for 40 years. Kids these days have too much. When Anna was growing up, she understood how to share. That was the sentence that made me finally speak. "No, Dad," I said. "I didn't." He looked at me like I had interrupted something that wasn't my business. "You didn't teach me to share," I said. "You took things from me and gave them to other people." My mother shifted in her seat. "Anna, that's not." "When I was 11, I said, you gave my roller skates to my cousin because his family couldn't afford a pair. I hadn't been asked. A year after that, you gave away my guitar to the neighbor's son because he wanted to learn. I sat in my room and cried while you told me that good children don't get attached to possessions." The table was completely quiet. I had buried those memories so deep I had nearly forgotten them. But hearing him use the same language with Sophie, she'd appreciate it more, pulled them straight back to the surface. Danielle nodded toward Sophie, still sitting very still, staring at her plate. "She's 10 years old. She waited months for that bike. That's not a lesson in generosity. That's something else entirely." My father waved his hand. "Jade doesn't have one." Daniel looked at him for a long moment. Then he asked the question that changed the entire night. "Is that why you've been asking us for money for the last 6 months?" My father's face shifted. Something behind his eyes moved. My mother looked confused. "What? Money?" Daniel didn't look away from my father. "The money for the house repairs," he said. "The roof in September, the water heater in October, the driveway in December." My mother turned slowly toward my father. "Frank, what is he talking about?" My father didn't answer immediately. That silence was its own kind of answer. Daniel reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, and placed it on the table face up. "I looked something up yesterday," he said. My father went very still. "You didn't spend that money on repairs," Daniel said. My mother's voice was careful now. "What do you mean he didn't?" Daniel slid the phone slightly toward the center of the table. "For 6 months, Frank has been asking us for money and telling me he needed it for the house. He told you that we offered to help, that it was our idea." He paused. He was lying to both of us. My mother turned to my father. "You told me Anna and Mark came to you." My father said nothing. "I had a contractor go through the house last week," Daniel continued. "The roof is fine. The plumbing is fine. There was nothing that needed fixing." My mother's face went through several expressions at once. "Then where did it go?" Daniel unlocked the phone. I pulled the property records. He turned the screen so we could all see. Part of it went toward a down payment. "For what?" my mother asked. Daniel looked directly at my father. "A car." Sophie looked up for the first time since the conversation had turned. My mother shook her head slowly. "That doesn't make sense," Daniel said. "It was for Jade." The air in the room felt different after that. My mother stared at my father. Sophie stared at the table. My father looked at the tablecloth like he was waiting for it to say something on his behalf. "Jade is 15, my mother said. "Exactly," Daniel said. My father stood up. "That is none of your business." "You made it our business," Daniel said quietly. "You asked us for the money. I'm helping my granddaughter." Daniel gestured towards Sophie, still sitting with her hands folded in her lap. "You already have one." My father looked at Sophie. Then he said the sentence I will never forget. "Jade needs help more than she does." Sophie lowered her eyes. I felt something let go inside me, something I hadn't realized I had been holding for years. Daniel walked around the table to Sophie. He rested his hand on her shoulder for a moment. Then he looked at my father. "We're leaving," he said, "and after tonight, you won't be seeing Sophie anymore." My mother stood halfway up from her chair. "Wait, let's just, and the financial help stops today," Daniel said. "All of it. Every month." My father's expression cracked. "What? $3,000 a month?" Daniel said. "No more." My mother's head turned toward my father so fast. "Every month?" she asked. "How much has it been total?" My father rubbed his forehead. It was temporary. The house was fine, Daniel said. There was no temporary. There was no emergency. You lied. My father's voice was different now. We can figure this out. Just sit down. Let's talk about this. We are talking about it, Daniel said. He picked up his jacket. Put your coat on, Sophie. She stood up quietly and reached for her jacket on the back of the chair. My father changed his approach. His voice softened. You're going to punish me over a bike. Daniel stopped near the door and turned back one last time. This isn't about the bike, he said. It never was. It's about the fact that you have spent years treating our daughter like she matters less than everyone else. And tonight you sat at her birthday dinner and told her to hand over the one thing she was most excited about because someone else deserved it more. My father started to speak, but before he could, a small voice came from behind us. Sophie. Her jacket was already on. She had been so quiet through everything that I think we had all almost forgotten she was still in the room. Grandpa doesn't like me, she said. The words were so simple and so certain. My father moved immediately. That is not true. You always give my things away, she said. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was just saying what she had concluded. You did it with my puzzle last year too. I had forgotten about the puzzle entirely. A Christmas gift. A few weeks after the holiday, my father had quietly taken it and given it to a neighbor's child because he assumed Sophie was finished with it. At the time, I had dismissed it. It was just a puzzle. It wasn't worth the argument. I had told Sophie the same thing. She had remembered. You weren't using it, my father said. Sophie looked at him for a moment. Then she said, You like Jade more. My mother covered her mouth. My father looked stunned in a way that had nothing to do with being caught. He looked like someone who had never once considered that a child might be keeping track. That's ridiculous, he said. Sophie had already turned toward the door. I want to go home, she said. Daniel opened the door. Okay. My father's voice took on a desperate edge. Anna, you're going to do this because a child misunderstood something. I looked at him for a long moment. She didn't misunderstand anything, I said. She understood it perfectly. My mother stood up. We can fix this, please. This should have been fixed years ago, Daniel said. My father followed us into the hallway. Families fight. This is normal. You're overreacting. Daniel helped Sophie step through the door. Then he turned back one final time. You told a 10-year-old to give away her birthday gift because someone else would appreciate it more, he said. You asked us for thousands of dollars over 6 months and lied about every single reason. And tonight, in front of your granddaughter, you said another child need your help more than she does. He paused. We're done. My father's voice dropped. We can talk about this. We can work it out. Danielle nodded once. We just did. Then he said the 4 words that closed the door on everything. Don't contact us again. My father stood in the hallway as we walked to the car. I don't know how long he stayed there. We drove home without talking much. Sophie fell asleep in the back seat with her head against the window. That was 8 months ago. He has called more times than I can count. He sent long messages, some apologetic, some accusatory, some both at once. He showed up at our house, unannounced one evening, and stood on the porch asking to see Sophie. After that, Daniel blocked his number. I haven't responded to any of it. My mother and I have spoken a handful of times. Those conversations are careful and sad in the way that conversations become when both people know the truth, but neither one can fully say it out loud. And Sophie, she adjusted in that quiet, matter-of-fact way that children sometimes do when a weight they didn't have a name for is finally lifted. A few weeks after that dinner, she was riding her teal bike down the driveway in the early evening. She looped back around. and stopped beside me where I was standing on the porch. She looked up with the most relaxed expression I had seen on her face in a long time. "Mom," she said, "Sundays are nice now." That was it. That was how she said it. Sundays are nice now. I stood there watching her ride back down the driveway and thought about all the Sunday dinners I had spent, ignoring that look on my father's face. All the years I had told myself it wasn't a big deal, that he didn't mean it, that it wasn't worth the fight. Sophie had been keeping score the whole time. Not out of resentment. She's not built that way. She just noticed. Kids always notice. And she had spent years quietly wondering why her grandfather always seemed to be looking past her towards someone who wasn't there. She doesn't wonder that anymore. And I think that is the thing I will carry longest from all of this. Not the confrontation, not the money, not even the lies. It's the image of my daughter riding her birthday bike down the driveway on a Sunday evening, finally at ease. Some things take too long to fix, but when they are finally fixed, you feel it in the quiet. I used to wonder if I had overreacted. That's the thing about families. They train you to doubt yourself just long enough to let things keep happening. You tell yourself the situation is complicated, that relationships are messy, that people don't always mean what they say. And that's sometimes true. But sometimes the most honest thing a person can do is listen to a 10-year-old who says, plainly and without drama, you like someone else more, not as an accusation, just as a fact she had quietly collected over years of small moments that I had kept dismissing. Daniel saw it before I did. He had been patient longer than he should have needed to be, and when he finally drew the line, he didn't waver. I am grateful for that. I'm grateful that Sophie saw someone stand up for her at that table, that the last memory she carries from that house isn't of being told to hand over something she loved. Children remember the moments they are defended just as clearly as the moments they are let down. If there's anything worth taking from all of this, it's that the people who love us shouldn't have to earn that love back after every visit. Home should not be a place where a child braces herself before walking in the door. Kindness extended in one direction, while withheld in another, is not kindness, it's preference. And children feel the difference far more acutely than adults ever give them credit for. Sophie is doing well. She still rides her teal bike. The basket has ribbons in it now, purple and white, which she picked herself. Sundays are nice.